Promise kept, posted by Shepherds We Shall Be. My sister, Jen, married right out of college and had 5 kids with her husband, Chris, over the next 8 years. He preferred that she stay home with the kids. She wanted to work, but accepted that life took her in a different direction. She cared for the house and kids, and he worked long hours to comfortably support the family. Chris's employer held a black tie dinner and event annually until 2020. Chris always attended alone, insisting that Jen needed to stay home to take care of the kids. The employer resumed the black tie events last year. My nieces and nephews then ranged from 7 to 16 years old and could stay by themselves a few hours. But Jen asked me to pick up her daughter from an activity and help with dinner on the night of the event. No problem. Jen told Chris she had everything arranged for the kids and she was excited to go to the event. Chris said he'd rather go alone because she had put on some weight and wouldn't be able to lose it in time to look good at a formal event, but they can go next year if she tries to get back into shape. My sister called me in tears to cancel our plans. She was shocked that Chris didn't want to be seen with her. I'm not shaming anyone for their weight, but Chris has to be bordering on clinically obese and blamed the extra weight on work stress. Meanwhile, my sister was 6 pounds overweight according to the BMI chart, and she's a natural beauty. Chris wanted her to lose 30 to 40 pounds to look good enough in formal attire. Jen politely declined my offer to castrate Chris and asked that I not discuss this with our family. I reluctantly agreed, but suggested marriage counseling because nothing about that was acceptable. Jen promised Chris that she would lose weight and attend the next year's event. She made an effort to eat healthier and worked out nightly after the kids were settled. She said that Chris was impressed with her determination and loved that she was taking his advice. At our family gatherings, he was more affectionate with her and bragged that she had been losing weight and trying to look her best for him. I bit my tongue so hard that I tasted blood. About 6 months later, the same week that Jen had reached her personal weight loss goal, she took her kids to our parents' house and quietly filed for divorce. I later found out that Chris had refused to entertain even a conversation about marriage counseling, berated Jen in front of the kids, accused her of having affairs in the limited alone time she had to run errands for the family or get a haircut, and privately and publicly often joked that she was stuck with him because no one else would want an unskilled, unemployed 40-something mother of 5. Apparently, his demand of weight loss was the straw that broke the camel's back. Jen is now employed at a job she enjoys and spends tons of quality time with her kids. Chris sees him about 1 weekend a month because his work is too demanding to take care of the younger ones alone more frequently. The older 2 don't go to his house anymore because they say he leaves them to take care for their younger siblings. This past weekend, Jen fulfilled her initial promise to Chris that she would lose weight and attend the next black tie event, but not with him. She went with a longtime friend who works for the same organization as Chris. She wore a beautiful gown and looked stunning. Chris started a conversation with her, during which he put his arm around her waist and tried to physically pull her away from her date. In front of his colleagues, she updated him on the recent accomplishments of their older children, who he had not seen or spoken with in more than 2 months. He awkwardly left shortly afterward, reportedly red-faced. As it turns out, many people want a 40-something mom of 5, a successful man who was Jen's high school sweetheart, a good employer who values her ability to multitask, fine-tuned by years of being a dedicated mom to active kids, and her children, who are generally happy that she left their pompous jerk of a father. Hey, I'm just saying, as a married guy myself, you always appreciate and love your wife for all the stuff that she does, and you don't treat her like this. This is something that they definitely needed marriage counseling for, because holy cow, how can you even say all this stuff, man? You're crazy. And I just had to include this comment by Sparrow Flyaway, where Chris says, lose some weight, and Jen says, how about I drop several hundred pounds of dead weight right now, and leaves with Chris having a surprised Pikachu face. Pretty funny comment there. Leave the floor wet? Alright, enjoy your rotten wood, posted by Darkalter 2000. Back in the early 2000s, my mother, 40 female, worked as a cleaner for a couple of places and took me, a 13-year-old male, with her to help. One place we worked for was the only real estate place in town. We cleaned up before the people who worked there got in. When I started there, it was small and somewhat dirty. Old smelly cubicle partitions and faded brown off-color walls, ingrained dirt in the linoleum. We cleaned and I literally couldn't tell the difference after we were done, except the mirror in the washroom not having any spots on it and the floor being wet from the fresh mopping. Then the town started becoming a cottage town and it's decided that they'll move to a nicer place. Cottagers might find the griminess a little off-putting. New place had a bit more space, brand new blue cubicle partitions, newly painted walls that still smelled the first day I cleaned in there, and a cheap hardwood panel floor. That floor was a bit of a problem. See, before, when we mopped, we would just leave the water to dry on the linoleum. We could do that because we got there at around 6:30 and they opened it at 7:30. That place, it was small enough that it was mopped by around 7 o'clock before we left, and it'd be mostly dry by the time the people arrived. If we did the same thing for this cheap wood floor, my mother was worried that we would have water seep into the cracks between the wood panels and rot them. So a new method for mopping was devised. First, I dunk the mop, then wring the mop lightly, mop up, wring the mop again, but fully this time, and then mop up as much of the excess water as possible. This new method actually visibly got a lot more water off the floor. By the time we left, some of the earlier mopped areas would look mostly dry. Good solution, Mom. Couple weeks into the new place, my mother gets contacted by the manager and a new order comes in that we are not to dry the floor. I asked if she explained why we dried it, and she had. I found this order a bit baffling at the time, and it only occurred to me today the reason why he ordered this. The manager got in earlier than everyone else at around 7:15, so I actually saw him a few rare times when we ran late. The old floor would have still been visibly wet in the old place when he got in. The new floor was now dry when he got in. Ipso facto, we must have decided to skip mopping to leave early. Even though I didn't understand at the time that he thought we weren't doing our job, I, of course, found this new order stupid. I thought, well, he wants the floors wet when he gets in? Fine. Cue malicious compliance. You see, I did the mopping while my mom cleaned the washroom because I was a young strapping lad and she was Mom, so I did what she said. I now had a standing order from the boss to leave a wet floor, and by gum, it was gonna be sopping. From that day forth, not only did I not dry the floor, I now didn't even wring the mop after dunking it. I dipped it in the water and just let that water slop off the mop as I pulled it directly out of the bucket. There was no way this was going to dry before he got in. Probably not for an hour after he got in either. 2 weeks after I started doing this, lo and behold, the wood paneling is already starting to separate at the seams. Dirt is accumulating between tiles. It proves impossible to remove. I was a bit shocked at the time at how fast that had happened. 4 weeks into the new mopping routine, the floor was rotting. Was my mother psychic or what? It was apparently very cheap fiberboard with a paper-thin plastic wood grain pattern on it. I would have guessed a laminate wood grain on top of semi-waterproof fiberboard if you'd asked me 4 weeks ago. The floor now had visible divots and lines where the plastic paper sank into the deteriorating wood underneath. These trapped dirt in them as well. How classy. The floor, not even 2 months after they had moved into the new place, was even worse than the old beat-up linoleum one. At this point, I asked my mother if we should start drying the floor, and wouldn't you know it, she had already asked. The answer was no. Leave it wet. Baffling. We cleaned there for another month or so. I barely felt safe walking on the floor as it was a now tripping hazard with warped parts popping up. It was also disintegrating. Splinters of wood would pop off every time I swept. The floor now had the dubious distinction of being the worst floor I had seen in a place that wasn't dilapidated. This is good here, OP, because you knew what the right thing to do was with your work experience, and the manager, their misunderstandings and all, said, no, it's better the way I want to do it, even though this is completely the wrong way. I'm not the one there cleaning it every day, knowing how this thing works. I just don't trust you, and even though you work for me. That, OP, is the true definition of a well-done malicious compliance. Customers are always right? Posted by Lady Love. So I work as a minimum wage cashier at a discount store. I see a lot of people in a day, especially people who know how to do my job better than me, due to their lack of experience and profound understanding that my job is the easiest in the world. Now, I always shut that crap down in the classic corporate happy public service employee way. Well, actually, it makes it a little easier this way, but thank you so much for helping. Like I'm talking a toddler down from an upcoming tantrum, but I don't leave room for arguing. It's almost like I'm playing a character, honestly. It works for me. But I never just let someone do something stupid, like letting them walk out with a bag too heavy without double bagging it, or letting them leave putting their receipt in their bag if it looks like they might want to return it. But not today. It's Saturday, so it's busy. All day, as I would finally get a minute to get my other work done, someone would come up taking forever to consider the impulse buys while I'm stuck waiting for them at the register getting nothing done. This woman did that, but twice. She got up there, pondered for a minute, got a line behind her, and decided to go look at something else. I'm stuck with this line till just before she gets back and ponders again before finally getting to me. She's your average looking middle-aged soccer mom. But already, she's getting on my nerves. But hey, it's Saturday. Every customer gets on my nerves, so whatever. She's got a lot of larger but lightweight items with some smaller items like bags of candy and socks. So I'm getting half of it in one large bag, half of it in another large bag. So I go to get the second bag, handing her the first one when she goes, "No, I don't want a lot of bags. You can fit the rest in there. It's fine. You should ask before getting more bags. It's your job to do things how the customers want and ask. Otherwise, you should just know to do one bag if you can. It's wasteful. I only want one bag." And I thought to myself, oh wow, it sounds like she's never done retail a day in her life. She must know what she's doing. Now, it's also worth noting that she had a few heavier items. Not many, but a few. They were glass jars of sauces with lots of pigment and staining properties. It's also worth mentioning that she was getting some chips that came in bags with pointy, sharper edges that eat bags for breakfast. The bag gets too heavy and they press into the sides at any angle, and that bag's toast. It's also worth mentioning that she was getting several white clothes made of very stainable material. Nice clothes. She said they were for an important party she had to go to that night, bragging. Normally, I would double bag, which would keep the sharp corners in check. But she was right. She only wanted one bag, so that must be all she needs. So I get the glass jars in with the clothes, nested in there nicely spaced out where they wouldn't hit each other with clothes between them, and the bags on top spread around the top so it was easier to lift the bag, just like she wanted. That dang bag was already looking like it would bust wide open any second when she took it from the counter. Luckily, a line hadn't formed behind her, yet. Just someone looking at the impulse buys over, so I couldn't really step away, but nothing to do but watch where I had a clear view of that parking lot. I watched as she struggled out the two front doors, no automatic, got 1/4 of the way to her car when the bag burst. Glass and sauce everywhere. Sad, like she had $15 worth, about 5 jars. She struggled to force them back into the bag, hoping she could at least pile them in her arms with the bag holding it together, trying not to cut herself on the glass that she had wrapped up. It broke some more. She tried to salvage it and balance it back up. Failed. Gave up. Grabbed as much of an armful as she could. She had to take like 5 trips with her blouse and pants ruined. Maybe after over a year and a half of cashiering nearly every day, I know what I'm doing? Shocker. This is not only a customer is always right for OP, this is a Karen is always right. She waltzes up taking her sweet time, holding up the line, being all Karen, wanting one bag, and listen to the cashier. They know what they're doing, they have the experience. Take their advice or else you're just going to get your pants ruined. Fly by the seat in your pants, they're going to get ruined. All right, Karen? Good job, OP. Boss Karen illegally takes our lunch break, so we do this to get back at her. Click the next video on your screen so you don't miss it, and I'll see you there.